There are so many rules to writing, but there are so many rules to music. And I don't know the rules to either, and I don't care. Tegan Quinn.
Wait, I said that?
Yes, you did.
I was like, who said that? I love it.
That to me...
Yeah, and I meant it, too.
It fills me with such delight, and is kind of so indicative of how unique this project that you guys have undertook. It's such kind of a cool, like, punk rock attitude about the whole thing. It's just great.
Thank you.
This is Tegan and Sara, by the way.
Hi.
And Alt 987. This week is a good week for them. They released a brand new album. They released a brand new book. We're here to talk about both. Let's start with the book.
Cool.
Is this something that you guys have thought about doing for a long time? Or were you, like, presented with the idea and you're like, yes, that makes sense?
We definitely weren't presented with the idea, but we've been friends with our book agent for a long time, and he was always just like, you'll know when the time comes, you know? There's, like, certain people should write a book. He always thought that we had an interesting story and we should tell it. And we had this window of time that opened up and a desire to be creative during that time, but weren't sure what to be creative about.
Sure.
And we had dinner one night with our agent and our managers, and Sara and I got talking about how we really didn't want to write about our career, but we wanted to write about our younger life. And specifically, Sara really honed in on the idea of writing about our adolescence and high school. Because during those 3 years of high school, in Canada it's 3 years, we figured out we were musicians, we started writing songs, we started our band, so it's the origin story of Tegan and Sara, but we also started to figure out who we were as people, you know, that's when we figured out we were gay, and we also, as we started writing, realized it was an opportunity to debunk this myth about being twins and being, you know, each other's best friend and having each other and confiding in one another. We were actually pretty isolated from one another emotionally, and so it just became like a very big thing in our world where we were like, this is actually really important, and so we carved out a year and a half and went to work on the book.
Well, it's incredible, and from what I've read so far, I've read a little bit of the book, I've read a lot of articles about the book. The twin
It's
stuff...
obsessed with us.
Well, I just want to come in prepared.
You're an anomaly, then.
Well, thank you. The twin stuff to me was kind of the... at first, the most fascinating stuff.
Sure.
It just, again, on just kind of scratching the surface of what I'm sure the book gets into in depth. Just things that you two dealt with, just as twins, apart from everything else in your world, that it would never have occurred to me that people have to deal with.
I mean, I think that every twin, obviously, every experience is unique, and even within, you know, our twin relationship, Tegan has a really different perspective on the way that we've been received, if you will, as twins. I know that for myself, I've really associated the sort of intrusion of strangers, the way that people looked at us when we were little kids. You know, there was always these stories of, like, us being at the mall and people would come up and, like, touch us when we were little. And there was a sort of almost celebrity nature to being twins. And I think just like probably most celebrities or people with power or people with sort of... I don't know, like a sort of unique quality or thing about them where people sort of are interested in it. There are pros and cons to that. And on one hand, it was sort of a superpower. We moved around a lot, and it was always like, oh yeah, we're twins. Like, it was interesting. We could come into a new situation and we sort of like immediately stood out from a lot of people.
Sure.
But that also, for me, it made me feel insecure. Like, am I interesting? Am I something? Like, what is my value as an individual? Like, do people like me because of me? And I think, you know, there's something interesting about finding a way to sort of talk about that sort of intersection of, like, how being twins affected our identity, our confidence, our insecurities, and how being musicians and celebrities, though I don't really love that word to identify us, but how those two things intersect and how there's something very common about them, and how we have sort of a sense of confidence as performers that I think in some weird way is like a symptom or side effect of being twins.
Yeah, it's almost like being twins prepared you for eventual attention that you would get because of your music.
It's very similar in a lot of way. I mean, like, there's something nice about being a musician because I actually know I'm giving something to someone. Like, I know that they're not just interested in me because I'm alive. Like, they're like, I love your music. Okay, that feels good to me. Then I feel like I've given you something and you're giving me something back. Whereas with twins, sometimes I'd be like, yep, we're twins. But what happens? What do you do with that information? You know?
Exactly. One you create, one you just kind of are and didn't have anything really to do with.
Yeah.
That makes all the sense in the world to me. You mentioned insecurities. And I guess any book that anybody writes about their high school years that's remotely honest is going to deal with insecurities. But I wanted to bring up honesty. Honesty is something that has always existed in your songwriting. Did you find yourself at all, or did you find it at all difficult to not paint yourself in a more favorable light as you're writing about yourself? It's easy to go back and do that, and would require, I would think, checking yourself a lot.
Well, I suppose that's the benefit of having a built-in checker.
Yeah, I
fact
guess,
checker.
yeah,
I've been
yeah, I guess
touring
right.
around life for all my entire life has been in Sarah's been my fact checker. I definitely think when we were writing the book, there were moments where there was like not conflict, but certainly conversation about, geez, does this part of our story need to go in here? And I think that ultimately we just identified the major themes and just tried to always keep the story within those, like, you know, those lanes. There were times where we veered into, like, you know, other themes and other things that happened to us, and I think that was where we edited. But within the themes we identified, like being sisters, our sexuality, music, and our drug use, we were like, it was kind of like that. Those areas we want to be as truthful as much as possible. I do think that we were weary of making a tell-all or being salacious.
Yeah.
We wanted to be very, very clear to our family and friends that we weren't telling their story, we're telling our story. So a lot was edited out of the book to protect people. A lot of details were changed to also protect people's identities. And I am proud of what we ended up putting out there. But, you know, there are some tough stories in there. We talk a lot about homophobia in our circle of friends, but also within our family.
Sure.
And that has brought up some interesting conversations.
Yeah.
But my hope was that we did it with a respectful voice, and I think every time we talk about other people's homophobia, we're very quick to check our own. In the 90s, we might have known that we were gay, but we still were battling and grappling with that. We used inappropriate language. We teased each other all the time. Though we didn't say we were gay to each other, we would call each other gay.
Sure.
And, you know, there were just words that were used in the 90s about gay people that were really harmful, and people in our world used them, and we wanted to explore that. We wanted to talk about some of the things that were happening around us that made us, you know, question ourselves or keep ourselves in the closet longer. So yeah, it was hard. It's not easy. I mean, the book just came out, and it's like, you know, people are starting to get to those sections and being like, wow, you wrote about that, huh? And but I'm proud of what we did. I think it was important. I think showing the real us is what we do. That has always been quintessential Tegan and Sara. We're also very good at keeping a lot to ourselves, but making you feel welcomed and open up to it. But Sarah's been saying this, there's a lot left to tell, but we kept it out of the book.
Gotcha. It's funny you bring up the people involved with the book, people that were involved with your story. There is a very positive aspect of that, and that this was kind of a collaborative effort in... You are still friends with a lot of people from high school, and they contributed a lot to this book. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how they contributed and kind of some of the old stuff that you went through to write the book.
When we had really different process, I wasn't as drawn to, I mean, I love all my friends from high school, and I'm still deeply connected with them, but this was totally about my memory, not theirs, and I trusted my instinct, and the story I wanted to tell was very clear to me. What I eventually did was, once I had sort of like narrowed down, like this is really sort of my narrative in the arc of the book, then I would start to say like, what do you remember about Wendy's New Year's Eve party? Like just to get like little details or like little things that I might have forgotten. And some of those archival materials that we found, like VHS tapes from the 90s of ourselves goofing around with our friends, playing music. We found our old music from high school, a zillion photographs, lots of notes that we wrote to our friends. That stuff just added like wonderful dialogue or texture, and it allowed us to sort of like fill in some of the like color that we needed when we started to get into like the second or third draft. But I didn't feel as preoccupied with making sure it was like an account. My story was like exactly how my best friend would have remembered it. Like that wasn't as important to me because I was like, I don't know, it's my story, and if I got a few details wrong, they're still my details. Like they're not, you know, it's not a biography. You know, we wanted it to read in a way that could almost be like fiction. You know,
it occurred to me that you two are writers. You have been writers now for decades.
Sure.
Songwriters. This is a different type of writing, but it's still writing. So part of me thinks that this would have been an easier process writing a book than for most people, but part of me also thinks that it would be obviously a different thing. I didn't know if you could explain some of the differences for you in expressing yourself in a book form as opposed to a song form.
I mean, I definitely agree we're writers, but I don't think every songwriter could sit down and write a book. I think it takes a lot of discipline, and that's something you'll hear from most writers is they struggle with, sitting down every day and staying focused and finishing it, I think that is where we excel because we are extremely studious. We're both we work business hours and we've always invested an enormous amount of time into the business side of things.
Yeah.
So this felt pretty natural. I think the big difference is that at the end of the day, you don't have a song you can play someone to get gratification for your work.
Yeah.
When my partner would come home, from work and I'd say, do you want to read the 6,000 word chapter that I wrote today? And I didn't want her to read it. I wanted to read it to her. And she'd be like, yeah. And, I'm making changes while I'm reading it. I'm messing up. I'm trying to explain things. So there was a little less satisfaction on a daily basis because there's just nothing better than spending
Maybe it's the performer part of our
there was no performance part of this. We waited 18 months and now it's coming out into the world.
Sure.
And so there was just a long wait for that satisfaction that comes, but a lot of it was similar. Honestly, it was not, we have always written, we've blogged, we've both also, as young people, we really liked to write in the traditional sense, and then when we became songwriters, we shifted that focus to other places. So, it wasn't that bad.
I guess there's not that immediate gratification as well. You're on stage, you play a song, you know pretty quickly whether or not it connected or didn't connect, and you have been working on this for a long time.
Or if you spend 20 hours working on a song and I email it to Sarah, and I get an email back from her, even if it's just like, oh, this is awesome, you're like, okay, cool,
Totally.
And the book was different. That wasn't happening, and we didn't use our editors in the way some writers do, where they constantly send new material.
Yeah.
We waited until we had a full draft, which was over 500 pages, and almost 5 months after signing the deal. So it made us, I guess we're more patient than I guess we're more patient.
Sure.
In addition to being studious and focused and business-like, we're also patient.
They're not joking about the work ethic either. I read stories of every day showing up to the library.
Oh,
9 a.m.
I actually have been making this joke because a few people in the press have dared to ask us, did you write this book?
Yeah.
Is this a ghostwriter? And I've been joking that I'm going to get, security camera footage from the library in Glendale, where I was working across from the Americana every day, showing up with my my bag, and I was no, I worked damn hard on this. I really felt. Again, just we don't make albums alone in a vacuum. We use producers and we work with other collaborators, and it takes a village to make anything.
Of course.
So. Did we do every detail of this book alone? No, we needed to be able to send a draft and have the editor write back comments I have no idea what you're talking about here, or I need more from you here, or I think you can do better than this. Where else can you go with this? That kind of collaborative kind of thing that happens when you're working on music or you're working in a book, it's where we really excel. But, the actual hard work of just getting up every day and taking my laptop to the library to write the story, I felt really proud of that, and being able to do that and really switch gears. And the performance part of us is maybe it's because we're Canadian, I don't know, but I desperately seek attention, and I long for isolation.
Sure.
So the writerly part of me really enjoyed just being anonymous at the library every day, just being surrounded by people.
I don't think the footage is going to prove anything. I mean, she could have been there playing. She could have been there playing Candy
What's the
Crush
thing
or
from Shining?
Solitaire.
It's like Jack Nicholson in The Shining. I'm just going to work,
I
everyone.
keep saying the video footage thing, and I'm who knows? It does not prove that a ghostwriter didn't write your side.
Proves
That's true.
you know what it proves? That I was at least committed to going to the library.
Agreed.
every day.
And that's more than most.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Was the idea always to do a record with the book, or
No,
when did that come up?
when Sarah and I started writing the book, it was partly to take a year off the road and not rush into making a record. And as soon as I found the demos, which took a long time, so when we started writing the book, we started talking about the period of our lives where in grade 10 we find a guitar, we start to write songs immediately, and almost at the exact same time we start recording those songs. We're really obsessed with listening to ourselves, and I couldn't find the tapes. Sarah and I had created this WhatsApp group with all our high school friends. We reached out to all our family. Nobody had them. We didn't keep them.
Yeah.
This is our first 40 songs. They just kind of gone into the void. And
So
then
when we found them, we were amazed and excited.
it was thrilling. And initially we were just maybe we'll pick the best ones and we'll put it out on the audio version of the book, and maybe we'll put out a little EP, an acoustic EP or something, and tour it with the book. But the more that we listened to the songs, the more I was just really surprised at how good they were.
Yeah.
I think, there were parts of the tapes that were warped. A lot of the lyrics needed to be rewritten or, put kind of just changed or tweaked a bit. And there was a lot of songs, and we needed to make them less so. We didn't know about bridges.
Sure.
There was some traditional, kind of songwriting stuff that we didn't know yet. But generally, the songs were surprisingly good. The melodies were so memorable. And the interplay between Sarah and I thought that's something we had developed over time.
Yeah.
But that was in the first recordings, we were already doing that. And I just became obsessed with this idea that this was the best companion piece to the book. And it would do justice to this young Tegan and Sara that I think didn't get its due.
Yeah.
You know, like I think when we first started making music, people wrote us off. They're like, they're young, they're twins, they're, you know, that's why they got signed.
Sure.
And I think we bought into that narrative, and I think the more time we spent with young us, the more I was like, well, this is fucked up.
Yeah.
So I wanted people to hear the songs.
Absolutely.
I wanted to show that we were good songwriters right from the start.
I didn't do a good job of making it clear that this record is, again, and you did right there, is a reworking and a reimagining of many of these old songs that you guys wrote when you were 15. And again, I mean this in the most positive and I guess awesome way possible, is I feel like you guys right now are fans of your 15-year-old selves.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And
they were so cool.
I was going to say, I think of anything that I would have made when I was 15, and I just feel like I would be horrifically embarrassed. And I think that your perspective is such a great and healthy one.
To be fair, I mean, there's context needed, right? Like, if we had just, took all of the stuff we found and just put it on the internet.
Of course.
It would, we've been very careful about how we sort of reveal these pieces. I couldn't just play you one of those songs and you would I did actually take the music to the record label and play them some of the songs, and they were like, yeah, I can hear a little bit of stuff in there that seems cool.
Well, there was trust that this version of us could take that and turn it into something.
Yes, we had a vision, and I think when you now that we've made something complete and polished, it's interesting to add that texture of here's what we've made as adults, and here's what we made as kids, and these things are linked.
Yeah.
And this inspired this, and it's sort of with that context, suddenly you can, the sort of the kind of embarrassing parts, or the things everyone has this oh my god, when I was 15 I would want to burn everything, I would never show anyone.
Sure.
The truth is that same. I mean, we didn't necessarily dig all of our stuff at first either, but because we spent so much time with it, and because we worked on it and used it as sort of influence or as inspiration, now I'm oh my god, I just am I want to protect those people. I want to protect those songs, and I want people to have the best opportunity to hear them and be excited about them.
It's definitely kind of the dream to be able to take the worldview of a 15 or 16-year-old, which in some ways is naive, but in some ways is sort of the most pure worldview.
Oh, it's amazing.
You look at things in such a way that you don't look at them because you know enough, but you also don't know enough.
Yeah.
But then to be able to take your experience years later and turn those into something more special maybe than they would have.
They also, just on a personal note, one of the things that really haunted me when I was writing the book was that I was writing about being a teenager who dressed alternatively, was, we had lots of friends. We weren't geeks, but we were definitely outsiders. And, kids on the street would laugh at our clothes and make fun of us and threaten to kick our butts or whatever.
Yeah.
And what I found really haunting was that, so I'm writing this, I'm writing in the library. This is me writing.
Sure.
You'll see this on the security
That's why it took 18 months now.
It took a long time. Yeah, block hands. Yeah, there was a paralysis. But no, I was writing the book, and then I would watch the videos, and I would make fun of myself in the videos. Mm-hmm. And I was I'm as bad as the people who used to bully us. I also could make that correlation between when I was 15, I put my clothes on every day, and I put my big chain on, and I went out into the world and was alternative, and I felt proud of myself.
Yeah.
And I'm what happened between when I was 15 and now that I'm 39? Now, why am I the bully? Why am I the jerk who's making fun of myself? I'm a kid in those videos.
Sure.
Why am I being so hard on myself? And I think it's a good lesson for all of us to yeah, fine, you got better hair and you're smarter and you're more worldly, and the things you create now are more purposeful or they're better or whatever it is. But that guy that you think didn't make anything cool or is a dork, it's still you.
Yeah.
And I feel that way when I look at those videos of us. I mean, I still sometimes cringe, but I'm also that's us. If I make fun of me, I'm in those videos, I'm really just making fun of me now, and I don't want to make fun of me. So it's there's some synchronicity in learning to love yourself through making something.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. And again, it's a perspective.
Let's get your old stuff out.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say,
entered the Tegan and Sara
Do you got
self-help era.
poetry, or what were you doing?
the closest thing I can come to is my Facebook post from 10 years ago that I look at and I go, I'm a
God.
horrible person,
Oh,
or
right,
I'm so embarrassed. No, it again, this project provides a perspective that people don't normally get, and it's, again, one of the many special things about it. When it came time to doing this whole thing live, combining this record and this book, you guys are also doing things that you have not done before. First show was earlier this week.
Yeah.
How'd it go?
The show, so yeah, when we,
Amazing.
Yeah, the show
Okay,
the
good.
show went amazing.
Yeah.
I always have to preface all of this stuff about touring and to say that we always make everything way harder, more complicated and stressful than it needs to be. But I think it's a testament to how much we care about our audience,
Of course, yeah.
and to the product that we put out there. Because to us, it's not a product because it's us.
Sure.
So everything we create is us. So. Yeah, this was supposed to be just a promotional book/record thing. Okay, stand at a podium, read from the book, la la la, answer a few questions from the audience, maybe play acoustic a couple songs.
Yeah.
It has turned into, I've been joking, it's like a off-Broadway musical of Tegan and Sara's collective works, and without dancing. That's the only thing that's missing. But yeah, we've
So
kind of-
far.
So
Yeah, I was
far,
gonna
I will
say,
see how the
we're
show
early
goes.
days.
Yeah.
We're early days.
But it's a big show. It's a really cool show. It's a very intimate show. First time in 15 years. Sarah and I are touring just the two of us on stage. We're playing, like I said, a collection of songs from all of our records, but focused on the new record.
Of course.
And telling our origin story on stage, reading, bantering and talking. We did one night so far. We took away everyone's cell phones. There were lots of tears. There was a lot of emotion.
Good.
It was very cool to be present with the audience.
Yeah, I bet.
We'll see how tomorrow goes in LA. I don't know. We're really thrilled. I at this point, I feel like if we're going to ask people to do anything, whether it's to stream, to buy, to participate, to come and spend a night in a space with us, I just want to make sure we're doing something unique and special and challenging. I want to really take risks, and I want our audience to feel seen and realized. I want them to look at us and feel like a piece of this is them. So I hope that's what we've done.
It'll be interesting to see how the shows change or how the audience change as
Yeah.
more people have had time to kind of consume this record
Yeah,
and this
and the book, and
yeah.
like even the first night, it was so cool, like to listen to Sarah reading and hear the audience reacting, and how that then made her like interact with the material, and to, we're not acting by any means, but there's, we're reading dialogue, so to see us come to life in front of the audience and to see the audience hooting and hollering, there's a lot of cheering that happens after the reading. It was really cool. I think it's truly a unique experience. If you've never seen Tegan and Sara before, or you have seen Tegan and Sara before, I think this whole thing is just, it feels like it's really taking down the wall between us and the audience, and it just feels really cool.
Well, yeah, and again, you keep saying the word unique, and I couldn't say it any better. It is a project that, just from a perspective, from who you are, what you have done, we have not seen before, and it is dealt with in such an honest and natural way. Nothing feels forced, nothing feels false, and you can tell that, people can tell that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And not that it has ever been the case with you, but it's great. It really is. It also, and I'm just going to kind of close with this, it feels like, and I feel like this has been the way, it's an interesting evolution that you guys have done, and it has certainly been this way the last couple of years, embracing your role, chosen or not, as role models for young women, for gay women, for performers. It is something that you take very seriously. It is something that I feel like in many ways, and correct me if I'm wrong, inspired the release of this book to put these stories out there, because there are not many of them, and it's just, again, for lack of, if I'm gushing, I'm sorry. It's just cool. It's a cool thing.
Yeah.
So thank you very much
How
for
dare
doing
you,
it.
gush.
Sorry.
Stop being so nice to us.
Sorry, dude.
We're really excited. It's an
Yeah.
honor, and I don't think that everyone in our position wants to be a role model, nor do I think everyone should be.
Yeah.
I think we've grown into it nicely.
Yes.
I think when we were younger, we resisted some of that. I don't know, like that responsibility is the word that I guess is popping up in my brain. Like, there were times where I was just like, can't I just like do my job? And like, do I have to be like, does everything have to be through the lens of like, I don't know, like activism, or does everything have to be for all gay people? Or like, sometimes gay people get mad at us, like, I don't even like your band, like as if like I had chose to be like a gay band for all the gay
Sure, yeah,
people.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I was like, I'm just making music, I'm just gay. They're two separate things.
Sure.
Like, so I think as we've gotten older and things have sort of like people just grew up and matured about these things. Like when we talk about our identity now, everyone's more comfortable with the language. Like back in the day, people would be like, get to this part of the conversation and they'd be like, so you're
Yeah.
like, it's okay to talk about it.
Sure.
And it was just like we were clumsily all trying to figure out if this was even something we wanted to talk about. And it's a relief for us to be able to talk about it. It is one of the greatest pleasures of being our age and having 20 years in the music industry to offer a place, a community, for both our fan base and for our peers in the music industry. When new bands start out, queer or not, we love to be the band that goes like, if you need any suggestions about things, you want to talk business, somebody's driving you crazy, we've got 20 years of experience. Let us be a mentor. Let us be role models. We want to be. And so there's something really satisfying about it. And now it feels like a good fit. Whereas like before it was sort of, I think, a bit pushed on us. Now we're like, let us be your role model. Like it's a different dynamic.
Well, it's definitely not an in-your-face thing. There are the types of people who are like standing on the soapbox going, I am this, I am a role model, and this.
Yeah.
And this more feels like you guys understanding that regardless of whether you want it or not, people are going to look to you.
We hold this space and we're happy to hold it.
Exactly.
We are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The name of the book is High School. Tegan and Sara, thank you very, very
Thank
much.
you for having us.
Absolutely. It is Alt 98.7.